queen to tell her subjects had no bread. Do you know what she said?
Let them eat cake.
Who took the bomb?
We're getting screwed, man. Every time we turn around, we're getting screwed. Oh, the revolution's going to be through podcasting for sure. That's the only way we talk. It's the little guys that take the brunt of everything. It's got to stop. Peasants, man. We're just peasants. Every one of us. You watch those old movies, you see the peasants in the background with the kings and queens walking around. We're those people. We're those people. Good. Oh, good morning, peasants. Welcome to another episode of the Peasant's Perspective. As you can see, I'm not in the normal studio. So, long story. Actually, it's not that long, really. We'll just get to it. I did the normal routine, went to the gym, got up at 4 a.m., did the whole thing. And then right as I was about to get to Ron's house, I got a phone call from Ron and he said, "Hey, Taylor, I don't have any internet." And I was like, "What do you mean you don't have any internet, Ron? We always have internet. You live right by the base. You never lose power." And he's like, "Last night," get this, last night he heard loud explosions, okay, really loud, and then his power went out, and it never goes out. Did I mention he lives right next to a base? Okay, so loud explosions, power went out, internet went down, power came back on about an hour later, no internet. So I rushed home, got here about 10 minutes ago, put together a show for you guys. So we'll see how it goes. Good morning, Shantini. Welcome, welcome. Frazier, good morning from Boise. God's Army Brat 9444. Good morning to you. Glad you made it. Ponyboy, good morning. Pray the Rosary Daily. Carleets, good morning, y'all. And Carlito and Tiffany on YouTube, good morning. So thank you so much for joining me. As you can see, I'm in my home office where I've got the famous bullhorn behind my shoulder here. Yes, that's the famous J6 bullhorn. Got me in a lot of trouble. Don't recommend taking a bullhorn anywhere. Okay, so I know why you guys are here. You're here for the simultaneous sip. All you need is a cup or a mug, a tankard, a chalice, a stein, a canteen, jug, or flask, a vessel of any kind. Fill it with your favorite liquid. I like coffee. And join me now for the unparalleled pleasure of the dopamine hit of the day, the thing that makes everything better, the simultaneous sip, and it starts right now. That is good. Okay, so I'm going to ask you guys to bear with me a little bit this morning. Bummer, no internet is not good. I know, seriously, right? So I'm going to ask you guys to bear with me a little bit this morning because I did have such a short time to show prep. And I've got to make sure I can get everything on my screen. I have to do things a little bit different. I'm not accustomed to doing this at home, so we'll just make it work. Okay, so Elon Musk this is a while ago. I don't think this is recent. This is some time back. And one of the things he said was the reason there's so much violence, and this was in the midst of Tesla being firebombed around the country and just all kinds of stuff. And it hasn't really stopped. There's been little things happening. There's been a lot of stuff. And he shared some insight that I think is important for us to understand. This whole setup at home is different for me. Okay, here we go.
I think they're getting desperate because, the reason we're seeing this extreme amount of hatred and violence is because we're actually succeeding in getting rid of corruption and waste. If we weren't succeeding in getting rid of corruption and waste, they wouldn't care. But we are succeeding. Without President Trump, this would be impossible. So I'd just like to say, it's only possible with this president.
It's only possible with this president. How am I going to figure this out? I've got too many things I have to toggle back and forth. This is weird. They've got this Rumble beta studio, and it's a little more complicated than you'd think it would be. I've got to figure out a way to get everything in the right place. It matters when you're doing this. It matters that you have stuff where you can see it. Okay. So this idea that Elon Musk presents, that the only reason people are having a hard time is because they're winning, right? If they're not winning, you just sit back and let the enemy defeat itself. So when you hear the Democrats just totally screaming, or sometimes the Republicans losing their minds, it's usually because they're losing, right? Otherwise, why would you cause such a fuss? And that's something that we see all over the place. When we talk about the Iran war, you've got different people with different stakeholder interests. That's the thing that I've realized is going through all this is common sense doesn't really prevail. Things that you and I might go, well, of course you should do it, way XYZ because that makes sense. Why do our politicians vote in different ways? Why do they do things that just don't make any sense to us? It's because the stakeholder interests are different, right? If you're a politician that has a district that has a whole lot of manufacturing for bombs, right? Bombs are good for business. And if once the stockpile is full and you don't have any use for the bombs, the factory loses its usefulness. And so there's an incentive to always have a place to, drop a couple bombs so that there's always some bombs on order. You don't really think about this as Americans. We try to avoid thinking about the fact that the military industrial complex drives a big part of our economy. Over the years, right, Alex Jones has been around talking about this kind of stuff for literally decades. And one of the themes you'll see with Alex Jones consistently is they talk about going to war with Iran, going to war with Iran, going to war with Iran. Why was he always talking about going to war with Iran? Well, the reason is because going to war with Iran was an unwinnable war. You couldn't win that war. It's like no military planners who looked at that situation and going boots on the ground, were you ever going to win it? But the thing about that is that's taking into account the way they want to fight wars, the neocon way of fighting wars. To them, you've got to win, and then you've got to institute democracy. And so what does that require? It requires taking over territory. It requires controlling, resources in that country. The same thing that we did in Iraq, the same thing we did in Afghanistan. Those were huge, huge nation building exercises that ultimately failed. I mean, I don't know, Iraq, I've heard people say, well, ultimately Iraq is better now after 20 years, but I don't know if that's the case. I mean, a huge portion of Iraq was taken over by ISIS. If you were in the middle of the ISIS caliphate, do you think you were very grateful that the Americans liberated you from Saddam Hussein? Right? So that creates a huge problem. Yesterday, there was a significant turn of events in the conflict in Iran. And what that centered around was China made this statement, and not a lot of people expected to hear this. And this is what the Chinese ambassador said. So let's add that to the stage here. Don't want to do that. See, I'm learning as we go, guys. Do that. Okay, so here is Guo Jinkun, and he is a spokesperson for the Chinese National Party. And this is a big deal, huge turn of events here. They're condemning Iran for bombing their neighbors.
China does not agree with the attacks on Gulf states and condemns all indiscriminate attacks on civilians and non-military targets. The urgent task is to immediately cease military operations and prevent further expansion of the conflict. The solution lies in returning to dialogue and negotiation as soon as possible and striving to restore peace. The fundamental solution is to jointly return to the right track of abiding by international law and the basic norms of international relations.
Okay, so that is a big deal because they have been Iran's, toggle myself back onto visibility. I got to change the background. You have to set up this Canvas stream. And I've never done that because we stream from the office. This is a big deal because China has been one of Iran's biggest Iran's biggest supporters, right? They have sold them military equipment as well as they have been the purchasers of military equipment, things like drones or bombs or missiles or whatever else Iran makes. And so the fact that China is saying that they condemn the attacks on the neighbor states that Iran made and that we want to return to dialogue, this shouldn't be overlooked. Now, one of the other things I saw yesterday, and unfortunately because I had just a few minutes to prep the show, this was earlier in the day yesterday, so I didn't quite get it pulled up. But let me see if I can find it real quick. There was a video that was put out that talked about two oil tankers that were bombed in the Gulf yesterday, and near the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, so, and there were they were literally Moab's, mother of all bombs. Moab bombs dropped in Iran yesterday. And I also read this really unique little piece where, looks like I can't find this video here. Can't find it anywhere. might be a good thing, actually. Anyways, there was a video of oil tankers that were being bombed, that had been bombed in the Straits of Hormuz, and it was 2 oil tankers, and they were up in smoke, and it was a big deal. Now, at the moment, right, it was a fresh posting, and sometimes you don't know if it's real or verified or not. I don't see it now, so maybe it was pulled down. I haven't heard anything on the news about these tankers being bombed. I haven't seen any other corroborating evidence, which just goes to show there's a lot of misinformation and false information out there. It's really hard to know. Now, I'm going to share you this video, which also I had to double check, but this one is a verified video. And this is in China. So why did China come out and make that statement? Well, Iran not having oil to deliver to China, because China was the biggest buyer of oil from Iran. What did they buy? 85% of their oil. This was in China yesterday, their gas lines. So there was a lot of American commentators that commented on this and said, oh, this looks a lot like the 1970s when we had to wait in line for gas because OPEC had an oil embargo. Well, this is China, right? They're trying to all fill up their tanks. There's a fuel shortage in China right now. How big of a deal is this? Right? We feel the pinch at the pump when the gas prices climb up. But imagine if you have actual gas shortages, right? There's no amount of money you can spend to get gas if there's no gas to get. So this has been very, very disruptive for China. And that is why, their foreign minister came out and said, hey, we want to return to dialogue, which is a really big signal to the Iranians that they do need to return to the table and they need to negotiate, or at least, end the hostilities. Now, another thing about this too is Trump has a trip planned with China. And this is really, really interesting. Okay. Now, Bloomberg News reports this. They say Beijing is irked that by Trump's rushed visit, not because China opposes dialogue, but because China is a civilization where, quote, planning and order are given oxygen, and Trump governs through improvisation and crisis patching. That's an interesting way to describe it. That's interesting. China prepares a major political meeting 1 year in advance. Everything is scripted. And that's something that you do when you study communism and you study socialism and all of its different flavors and forms over the years. They script things, right? They're super concerned about messaging. Nothing is authentic. All these communist societies devolve into being the most inauthentic things you can possibly imagine. Okay. And China is no exception to that. So while China is trying to prep for this singular event and they have to put all of their energy and focus into that, Trump's over there dealing with the Middle East and a summit while juggling the Middle East war that he helped ignite, tariffs struck down by the Supreme Court, collapsing alliances, and domestic chaos. All while Trump puts on a smiley face and is like, yep, we're winning. It's really amazing. Okay, so let me pull this up here and share with you guys this clip that's talking about China and kind of their planning on this and how they're irked by Trump, but they're going to continue on with the state meeting. Thank you for your patience, you guys. I'm not going to be as smooth as when I have Ron at the helm.
Expressing frustration over what they see as insufficient U.S. preparation for President Trump's upcoming visit at the end of the month. Our chief North Asia correspondent, Stephen Angle, joins us now from Beijing. Steve, it does look like they have different styles of preparing for this meeting.
Absolutely. Very, very different styles. Xi Jinping and Donald Trump, and the way they run their administrations are extremely different. The Chinese like to have everything choreographed, planned well in advance. And there's a real reason why, one of the reasons why the National People's Congress, which wraps up tomorrow, it's a annual session of parliament. They do it once a year because they have the whole rest of the year to plan for it, right? Same with state visits, especially one so high profile and so important to both countries that we're going to see in 3 weeks between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump. Whereas we've all seen in the first term and in the last year, the style of Donald Trump's administration 2.0 is very different than how the Chinese like to do it. In fact, we could probably assume that Donald Trump likes and thinks his spontaneity is an advantage. But that goes against what the host nation really wants. So we're hearing from sources that the Chinese side, floating this out there right now, 3 weeks before Donald Trump arrives, they're concerned that there has not been enough preparation and consultation between the two sides. Granted, the White House has been quite distracted, to put it quite mildly, with the war in Iran, with the upheaval of the tariff regime by the Supreme Court and other issues. Maybe China has not been the top priority, but look back in Haslinda 2017, in the first term of Donald Trump, when he came to China, he sent Rex Tillerson, his Secretary of State. He also sent his Commerce Secretary to China in the months before that to sort of lay the groundwork. That has not happened this time. There's been a low-level team that's been here for a little while, but we haven't seen those high-profile visits and dialogue to set the agenda, set the choreography, and set the deliverables. So it's a wild card for Xi Jinping in just 3 weeks.
Trump may be distracted, but he says he remains committed to making the Strip. You got to wonder how much of Chinese interests are at stake here at this particular meeting.
Well, absolutely, they are. And they've doubled down on saying how important this summit is going to be. They didn't cancel after the Trump administration, along with the Israelis, bombed Tehran, which I thought they might do because of the close ties between Tehran and Beijing. But no, in fact, we've heard the opposite. They are looking forward to this. They want to have a more fundamental relationship with the United States. They got some of the trade issues resolved, at least in a year-long truce late last year. So this was an opportunity for the Chinese perhaps to talk about much deeper strategic, even defense-related issues, in particular Taiwan. We're hearing that Xi Jinping wants to hear directly from Donald Trump on his Taiwan policy, because keep in mind, there is a military hardware package ready to be approved and signed by Donald Trump, but it's on hold right now, perhaps until after this summit, or maybe Xi Jinping can convince him to not do that arms sales package to Taiwan. So again, a lot is in the balance right now, but these are things that would normally have been discussed perhaps in the run-up to that. We are having a meeting this weekend, another trade round, if you will, between the USTR, Trade Representative Jameson Greer, Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, and He Lifeng of the Chinese in Paris. But it doesn't really set the groundwork for deeper defense and key issues that go beyond the trade relationship.
Chinese officials are...
There's too many buttons to push. I gotta move the mouse all over. I've got a couple screens here. By the way, Dad, you're probably listening. Thank you. This big curved screen you gave me is pretty awesome. Okay, so as you can see, China is like kind of, they're projecting that they're not quite dealing very well with this upcoming summit, right? Everything's in flux. Communist countries don't like that. They don't like things to be in flux. They want total control of everything. And Trump is able to handle the chaos. One of the things that I've learned in my life is that when you're grounded in truth, the chaos doesn't really matter, right? When you know the truth, you live by common sense, normal stuff, that you can deal with the chaos. Not every personality deals with it great, but for the most part, you can deal with it great. China has to manufacture everything. It's the ultimate Truman Show. And when reality hits the road, right, when China can't produce energy for their people, then there's problems. The other thing too, and this is, I think, got the whole world on notice, is that it appears, right, we've heard about the discombobulator down in Venezuela, but it also appears that they've used some type of new weapon in Iran. So Benny Johnson talks about this. This could be a pretty significant deal, and this might be one of the reasons why nobody has come to Iran's defense, which, one of the reasons is why would you want to come to their defense? But also the reason that other major powers are kind of sitting this one out is because there's some new tech that's happening, and that new tech is kind of terrifying. So here's Benny Johnson talking about it.
Change forever. Iran was just hit with some type of weapon that turned the entire sky blue, and then a ball of yellow shot up directly from the ground. A fireball that went effectively into space. Was Iran just hit with a laser weapon from space? This happening at the exact same time that President Trump just teased the power of our laser weapons, this happening seconds before Iran was struck. Listen to this.
And the laser technology that we have now is incredible. It's coming out pretty soon. Where literally lasers will do the work of, at a lot less cost, do the work of what the Patriots are doing or what other things are doing. The situation was very quickly approaching the point of no return, and the United States found it intolerable, in my opinion, based on what?
So President Trump here saying that the lasers, the exact quote is, the laser technology we have is incredible. It's coming out pretty soon. Lasers are going to do the same work as our missile systems, our ballistic missile systems. Well, that actually sounds like what we've seen in Iran, where the Iron Beam and then the Helios laser system that was mounted on the destroyer that took out the Iranian drone, and then the laser satellites that are in SpaceX satellites. We've seen all those systems operating in Iran. And so could this be what President Trump is teasing? Again, this comes on the heels of Donald Trump saying that we have weapons that are so powerful, we don't even understand them.
This country is very powerful. Let me tell you, it's far more powerful than people understand. We have weaponry that nobody has any idea what it is, and it is the most powerful weapons in the world that we have. More powerful than anybody, not even close.
President Trump previewing this. Check this out. President Trump saying, we have weapons that nobody even knows what it is. Okay, well, what exactly is this? Say what now? What kind of a weapon is that? And it's linked with these other. Look at that. What the hell is that? Literally. What is that? People are like, look. The video's coming out of Iran right now. Look.
Okay. Got again. I'd like it for the video to stop and then I show back up on screen. I need my co-pilot. Ron, where you at? Okay, so the prospect of new weaponry changes the game. So the other thing too, let me show you this here. By the way, my Twitter account got declared to be some type of spam account, so I have limited availability. Basically, I've been shadow banned on Twitter. Go figure. I can't believe that. Super frustrating. It's like you've got so many bot accounts and so many fake accounts. Mine's a totally authentic account, and I guess somebody probably reported me or something like that. So now my account's under review. So that's super fun. But okay, so last night let's see, I think this was in Tel Aviv. Last night in Israel, they had a new weapon system go live. And there's not a whole lot to see here. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to really see what we're looking at when we see this stuff. But if we're looking here, so let me share this with you guys while I'm on stage. Okay, so what was going on is Tel Aviv has kind of had a continuous barrage of missiles coming in. And what happened last night was Israel deployed a new missile defense system, a laser system. And this laser system was able to intercept all the missiles that came over at them. Now, the way that Iran has kind of played this game over time, and the way that they designed their strategy against Israel, is this idea of low cost attack, high cost defense. Right? I can shoot a missile at you, a projectile. I can lob something over the fence, right? But for you to intercept that, right, to actually grab it, because you've got to radar it, track its trajectory, launch a projectile. And so it's very expensive. It's like they can send a missile that costs them a couple $1,000s, 30 grand, 50 grand, a drone, and it would cost Israel $1 million or something like that for every one they had to fire down. So the math looks like this. Israel just deployed the, quote, Iron Beam in live combat for the first time in history. It's a literal laser, Okay, it shoots down missiles and drones out of the sky. Here's the deal. The cost per Iron Dome interceptor, every time they had to intercept a missile, $50,000 a pop. The cost per Iron Beam laser, $3.50 a pop. Did you hear me? $3.50 to shoot down a missile. Okay. It fires at the speed of light. There's no dodging it. It's more accurate, faster, gets there quicker. It never runs out of ammunition. As long as it has electricity, it fires. It's already integrated into Israel's layered air defense system. It just intercepted incoming projectiles in the middle of a war. Iran fired 5 missile barrages in 7 hours, and the Iron Beam didn't flinch. It got them all. This is why the Patriot interceptor crisis doesn't matter anymore. So all these naysayers out there, we're going to run out of ammunition. It's going to cost us too much money. Sure, based on the old model. But now we have a new model, right? Every time we have major world conflicts, there's oftentimes new technology introduced. The best example of this, honestly, is World War I, right? The machine gun got introduced. It changed the game, right? Mustard gas and different chemical warfare changed the way war was fought. We went from a world that was prepared to fight Napoleonic-style wars, revolutionary-style wars, where everybody would line up in their red target coats and they'd shoot at each other. You get the machine gun, one guy just took out the whole army. What are you going to do, right? Change the whole game. Then, obviously, in World War II, we get the atomic weapon. You can take out an entire city without a single boot on the ground. Changes the whole game. Well, now you've got lasers, which means you can do an incredible amount of damage for dollars, right? You don't even need to have a strong economic engine behind you. You just need to have electricity enough to charge the laser. That's why the Patriot interceptor crisis doesn't matter anymore. Ukraine burned through 600 Patriot interceptors in 1,460 days. The Iran war burned through 800 in 3 days. The rate is unsustainable. You can't manufacture interceptors fast enough. But the laser, unlimited shots, near zero cost, speed of light. Iran spent decades building missiles in an arsenal designed to overwhelm traditional air defense through sheer volume. Fire 1,000 missiles, hope 50 get through. That strategy just died. When a laser costs $3 per shot, it doesn't matter if you fly 1,000 or 10,000, every single one gets burned out of the sky. This isn't just the weapon, it's the end of the missile age. That is pretty significant. And I want to give credit to Jim-Wo Kim, IQ 289, for that. He's the smartest man ever tested with for IQ. This is pretty good analysis. He's right. Oh, look, cheap lasers can shoot down expensive missiles. Skull Spotter says, I follow back for always. Awesome. I'll make sure we follow you. How do I? So, okay, I'm following you, Skull Spotter. Very cool. Okay. By the way, sound check. Can I get anybody to sound check? I just want to make sure I'm 5x5 out there. Okay. Donald Trump yesterday said the Iran war will end soon because there's, quote, practically nothing left. Now, the other thing, when I saw this, I was like, oh my gosh. Italy under Giorgia Meloni has been a pretty good ally to Donald Trump specifically, right? I don't know how Italy fits in the big picture, if they're completely allied in every single way, but it sure seems like they've had a real populist surge. They've recognized that they're losing their Romanness or their Italianness, right, with illegal immigration. And Giorgia Meloni has been kind of a warrior going against the EU. And yesterday she took to the stage and she read a statement.
Ma intendiamo anche far sentire la nostra voce,
which we don't have to listen to all because it's in Italian. But the translation says this. Let me get this, stop sharing so I can read it to you guys. The translation says this. She says, Italy is, quote, not complicit in the U.S.-Israel military intervention in Iran. The operation was carried out outside of international law. She also condemned the killing of girls in southern Iran and demanded accountability. Now, this issue with the killing girls in southern Iran with the school, this is fake news. Okay, this is CNN, MS Now, and other haters putting out propaganda saying that this school was hit by a Tomahawk missile. There's been lots of video analysis because there's video of the missile hitting the school. It was not a Tomahawk missile. It was one of the Iranian missiles. Everything from the speed, the trajectory, the location of the fins on the missile, it was an Iranian missile. This goes along precisely with the modus operandi of Muslim fighters, where they will often target civilian targets in order to create international sympathy. This is classic false flag attacks, which just happens to be trending on Twitter this morning, right? The false flag attack. We always have to be wary of that. And in this situation, that appears to be exactly what has happened. Is Iran hit one of their own schools for the specific intention of getting the international actors to turn against them. Donald Trump was asked yesterday about an FBI bulletin went out to law enforcement in the state of California, warning them of attacks on the homeland, specifically drone attacks that were at a high risk. So Donald Trump took this question yesterday about that.
Heard about this bulletin that some law enforcement put out about a possible Iran revenge plot in California, where there would be some kind of a boat offshore launching drones towards the...
It's being investigated, but you have a lot of things happening, and all we can do is take them as they come. And the war itself is being prosecuted as well as anybody has ever seen, and this is other countries telling me too. Big countries, powerful countries, they said they've never seen anything like it. And they also agree with what I'm doing. They say it's an evil country, and it's been for 47 years that way.
And if they try to...
It's an evil country. They've been that way for 47 years. And other big countries are saying, hey, I can't believe how well this war's going. Yeah, you're shooting lasers. We don't have lasers. You're doing a good job, Mr. Trump. Donald Trump had a rally last night in Kentucky. I don't know if it was in Kentucky or it was in Ohio, but it was right on the Kentucky-Ohio border in Cincinnati. And so it was kind of a Kentucky rally. And in a big way, it was kind of a rally against Thomas Massie, which we'll talk about at the very end, maybe if we get into private. And but Donald Trump at his rally last night, lots of good clips from this, and I don't have a ton to share, but he did share this about the war in Iran. Now, when I heard this, because I listened to his whole rally, when I heard this, I had this thought of, I remember when I was younger, there was a certain president that went on an aircraft carrier with a big banner behind him that said mission accomplished. And we've won in Iraq. And 20 years later, we were still there. I hope that's not the case here. But Donald Trump last night in front of a huge audience declared this.
Is that a great name? Well, it's only good if you win. You know, you can only, and we've won. Let me say, we've won. You know, you never like to say too early you won. We won. We won the bet. In the first hour, it was over. But we won. But they gave me a list of names of generals. Sir, you can pick the name you'd like, sir. I said, the name of what? The name of the attack on Iran, sir. And they gave me like 20 names. And I'm like falling asleep. I didn't like any of them. Then I see Epic Fury. I said, I like that name. I like that name. Is that a great name?
So we've won, right? And even he says, yeah, Mari's missing my buddy Ron. Me too. I'm missing Ron. We've won. And I think it's funny, you know, he picked that name Epic Fury. Donald Trump is a stinking hilarious person. I listened to his rally last night, and I've listened to many rallies. He's kind of a stand-up comedian. He does this kind of running. Well, you guys, I assume you guys have listened to one of his rallies. He's really funny as a president. He's going to be someone that the historians are in written text. They're going to be like, who was this guy? Right? Because usually presidents are pretty precise in their language, but Donald Trump definitely he'll freewheel and deal here. Okay, so let's go back.
It remains.
Now, there is some other really great news that came out yesterday. And what came out was the Consumer Price Index. We had another CPI number. And guess what? It's doing good.
It remains at 2.4 on year-over-year headline. 2.4 really is, to find a lower number, you're going back to April of last year at 2.3. It remains at 2.4 on year-over.
Okay, so basically, even with the more recent war in Iran and stuff going on, the Consumer Price Index is flatlined. Donald Trump has totally fixed the inflation problem. This is one of those things. Now, I'm gonna dogpile on Thomas Massie here for a second. When I was in prison, and I had a really good friend in there that was pretty politically oriented. He was from Mississippi. He was a great guy. His family was super political. His mom was a senator in Mississippi. He was in there on a weapons of mass destruction charge. And what that means is he had a silencer You heard me, a silencer that was unregistered in his safe with other silencers that were registered. So he'd acquired a silencer that was unregistered. A traffic ticket, okay? A traffic ticket for a taillight that was out led to a vehicle inspection, which then had him with his guns. He was literally coming from the gun range, and his guns had a silencer on it. Well, when the officer saw the guns with the silencer, he arrested him. They got a search warrant. They went to his house. Now, the guns he had with him, there was no problem with them. Okay, there was no problems with the guns he had on his person. But because the dominoes start going there, they ended up at his house and they used the jaws of life to pop his safe, and they found one silencer that wasn't registered. He ended up doing 4 years in prison for that under a weapons of mass destruction charge. So make sure all your silencers are registered appropriately. Okay. Anyways, but he was super, super politically oriented. And he's a pay off the debt guy, go back to the gold standard guy. He's, pretty libertarian for the most part, conservative. I like it. Okay. It's kind of like classic Americana. But as we're watching the 2024 campaign, and we're watching Republicans just kind of make blunder after blunder. One of the things that really drove me crazy when Donald Trump was lobbying for them to do, not vote or vote for certain things, was there was this cast of characters that would always come out. It was Thomas Massey, it was Chip Roy, and there were a couple others that were kind of lesser, but they always did this. We don't want to spend the money and the debt and the national debt, and they would vote against good things. Well, Thomas Massey always really got under my skin because, as you guys know, I've shared it with you guys before. Thomas Massey was the lone committee vote that let the Inflation Reduction Act out of committee into the floor, which of course it passed because the Democrats had the majority. And there's a clip that I play sometimes where Thomas Massey's like, well, I don't really like this bill and it's going to cost a lot of money, but for democracy, I'll go ahead and vote it out of committee and let it go to the floor. They're going to vote it down, right? Or they're going to vote for it and it's going to cause all this inflation. So when the Democrats are in power, his little pen with the debt clock, totally performative. It's totally a ruse. Totally a ruse. He had, of all the congressmen that care about the national debt, to the extent that it even matters, okay, of all the congressmen, that guy would have been the one that would have laid it all on the line right there in the committee and prevented that act from going forward. If you remember back during COVID in 2020, Thomas Massey made all of the congressmen come back to DC so they could have a floor vote on the COVID relief package, which Donald Trump was promoting. Now, I didn't like the COVID relief package either, but he kind of did his whole thing where now that little debt clock that when the Democrats are in power is totally performative, all of a sudden he uses the debt clock as a cudgel to beat over the head of other Republicans. But yet, when the Democrats were in power, you had the vote that could have prevented the biggest inflation increase in our country's history. Thomas Massey is that guy. So when Donald Trump says things like he's disloyal to the party and he's not good, that's what he's talking about, right? When the stuff is decided and it goes to the floor, vote with your party. Don't grandstand on the floor and then pass things out of committee like that. It's super disingenuous, right? It's the opposite of what we really want to see. I had it out with Lauren Culp last night. Lauren Culp was the governor candidate in 2020. So Lauren Culp, in my belief, had an election stolen from him. I do not believe that Jay Inslee was reelected in 2020. I don't believe it. Okay. I believe that Lauren Culp won that election. It was fairly close for that governorship election, and he declined to continue the litigation and whatnot to get recounts. I get it. It's Washington State, but it's my opinion that they stole that election from him. So Lauren Culp is out there defending Massey and the Constitution this, the Constitution that. And I'm like, this is the problem. This is the problem. All the constitutionalists and the libertarians, it's never good enough. But your commitment to the Constitution, to these values, is what prevents us from restoring the Constitution. Because do you think the communists care about the Constitution? No. But what they do is they measure you up and they take your virtue, your good nature, and your desire to submit your will to the Constitution, and they use it against you. They weaponize it against you, right? Oh, Thomas Massey, let it out to the floor so we can have a debate. There are no debates on the House floor anymore. We are in a post-constitutional world, right? When the Democrats are in power, they trample all over it. The Republicans are in power. They are bound by it. I get it. I understand the inclination to want to follow the Constitution. We're way past that. Where's the gold and silver? Where's the grand jury indictments of the people? Go read the Constitution and go, wow, this doesn't really make sense to me. We're not doing these things. I know we're not doing those things because we're not in a constitutional republic. We're in some form of an admiralty stakeholder democracy of some sort, right? Which is why legislators get away with some of the silliest stuff. So I've got this cute little video. And in Washington state, this is near and dear to me. I'm in one of the states that was a tax-free state. There's a reason why Washington has tons of millionaires, 12 billionaires that live here, right? I mean, it's a great state to live in as far as income because we have an excellent economy. We have 2 or 3 of the biggest ports in the country, but also we have a huge tech industry. And so having no income tax is a really big deal. Well, Washington state just passed the House, passed the Senate. It's on its way to the governor's desk. It could be signed this morning for all we know. They've passed a state income tax. So I'm going to share with you a cute little kind of a Schoolhouse Rocky video about how Washington has this manipulated tax thing. Washington state has determined that income is personal property. This has been ratified by a vote of the people. It's been confirmed by the Supreme Court on multiple occasions. And in order to have a tax on property, they call it an excise tax, that has to be allocated evenly and all this kind of stuff. And then also can be considered special services. So what the legislature has done is they've gone against the definition that Washington's determined for income, that it's personal property, and they've called it an excise. So now your income is a privilege and they can tax it. So here's this little video explaining that.
I'm just a tax. Yes, I'm only a tax. Trying to make it through Washington's cracks. The Constitution says no, written in stone. You need 2/3 of the House and Senate. Then do it again, you're not so pleasant. Then ask every voter to raise their hand. Or call it an excise tax, a privilege fee. The words you use are the magical key. No vote from the people, no 2/3 in sight. Just change the name and make wrong look right. Constitution, we don't need no stinking Constitution. SB 6346. I'm just a
We don't need no stinking Constitution. We'll just change the meaning of the words. And that's exactly what's happened. Here's the architect of the Washington state income tax bill. And this is also kind of a funny video. It's a clip, but it's actually him talking and answering the question. But the reporter asking the question is that's the made up part. So it comes from, I think it was Billy Madison. Anyways, again, great little video explaining this. Or listen to our politicians, the architect of this tax, explaining it.
This question goes to you, Mr.
Oh, hold on. Gotta add it. Add it to the stage. There we go. So this question goes to you.
This question goes to you, Mr. Peterson. Do people own their income?
No, I think it is. No, they own the property once it has become income. This is not, if you think about it, I've been trying to think of good analogies to this. We sometimes have people who come into the United States, right? But they're not considered to have been in the United States because of the legal mechanism by which they got here, right? So there's a question about whether you're lawfully present. It's just an immigration idea. Maybe makes sense only to lawyers, but income is sort of it's this line at which somebody else's property becomes your property, right? That's income.
Mr. Peterson, what you've just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
So right. It's personal property when they give it to you, but then it becomes yours, and it's now your personal property because it's just passing of personal property. But there's this like immigration, right? Like it's the income, but they're not really incoming, and so that's the architect of our state taxes. They had no justification. They had no reason for this. They have no legal standing to do it. They just made it up. They just made up their reasons. They made up their excuses. They made up all of it. And so what's happened now is now Washington state takes its place amongst the states that charges income tax, but it's worse than that. We're not just charging an income tax, it's one of the largest income taxes. So here's our little chart here. So, you look at this is state income tax rates are diverging. Change in top tax rate by state 2020 to 2026, including pending legislation in South Carolina and Washington. So it's including this. So Arizona, Arkansas, Colorado, District of Columbia, taxes are going down. They're lowering their tax rates. Georgia, Idaho, down. District of Columbia, they're raising their tax rates. District of Columbia is at 10.75%, which, by the way, in the District of Columbia, their license plate says no taxation without representation. It's like their banner cry there. They tax themselves, but of course they don't have representation. So they put it on their license plate to memorialize the fact that they should be resisting taxation, even though they are being taxed. It's the weirdest thing. Okay, Georgia down, Idaho down, Indiana down, Iowa down 3.8%, 2.9% in Indiana. That's the state tax rate. Idaho's a 5.3%. Louisiana down 3%. Maryland 6.5%. Massachusetts, high taxes. They've gone up from mid fives up to 9%. Massachusetts down, Missouri down. Missouri, by the way, is in the midst of getting rid of income tax. They're going to add themselves to the list of states with no income tax, which I think is excellent. Very enticing to move there. I was in prison there. The weather's decent. Montana down, Nebraska down, New Mexico up, North Carolina up 10.9%, North Carolina down, North Dakota down, Ohio down, Oklahoma down, South Carolina down, Utah down, Washington. We were at zero. Look at this. We were at zero. It's kind of hard to see. I'm seeing it off the screen. And now we're at 9.9%. So we are now the third highest tax rate in the country with this. Now, what the Democrats will tell you is, oh yeah, but it's only on the millionaires. This year? What about next year, the year after? You specifically said in the committee meetings that they didn't want to bind future legislators from changing the tax rate by fixing it in stone that it can only be $1 million and over. I think the Supreme Court's going to strike the millionaire exemption and leave the tax rate in place, right? This is a huge, huge coup for the collectivists and the communists who just want to take your stuff. There's just no other way to explain that. Okay, give me just 1 second here because now it's perfectly relevant. I sent my wife a cute little meme yesterday, and as I just read that, I thought, this is a perfect chance to share that meme. Okay, so this right here is the Washington state attitude on this. Okay, give me just a second. All right. I feel like the show's going pretty good considering I had like 6 or 7 minutes to prep it. Okay, so this is a cute little cartoon, but this is what's going on in Washington. I want to help the poor. Yeah, Washington, we've got a lot of poor. We've got a lot of people dealing with homelessness and drug addiction. Then why don't you start a business and employ some of them, says the nicely dressed businessman. I'd rather just give them the money. And the businessman says, I'm not sure if that's the best solution, but okay. I mean, it's your money. You can give it to them. No, and then the person says, not really. I didn't mean my money. I meant your money. Okay, that's the joke, right? Washington wants to take money and redistribute it, but do they ever redistribute it good? No, never. It never works out. It never works out the way they intend it. And we've already got a pretty decent slew of people that are planning on leaving the state. And I know it's interesting. Over the years, my demographic have been the people that have been leaving the state of Washington in droves. And I don't know anybody that's not talking about it, right? One of the challenges with Washington is it's almost too expensive to leave. They've got you strapped, high property taxes, high fuel, high everything, and it makes it hard to leave because you're kind of stuck. You don't have the funds to go. But one of the things that I think we're going to find out is the massive miscalculation by our legislatures. There is a belief, and they say this openly in their committee hearings, they say that people won't leave. Maybe not. Maybe out of 100 people, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8% leave. Not a huge deal. There's probably some people coming in to replace them. You're moving from a state that already has state income taxes, so it's not a big deal. Or you're under $1 million. Okay, you're willing to come in and do it. The legislator has said in Washington, you're wealthy and should be taxed if you're over 138 grand a year. It's not that much for Western Washington. It really isn't. That's kind of like almost median income. It's probably almost median income. But anyways, one of the things about Washington is we have a lot of tech sector jobs. Okay, lots of them. Microsoft's based out of here, Amazon. You've got a lot of jobs that are tech jobs. They're all high income jobs. They're also the most mobile jobs. Okay, it is not a big deal for a computer programmer to move. In fact, in COVID, this is one of the things. The culture of going into the office and working in the cubicle was broken. Now you could go home and work from your laptop, and that became the norm. Those people are mobile. I know somebody who moved from, it was actually Portland, not Seattle, but he moved from Portland to a really remote area in Idaho, and he still works his big tech job. But here's the thing. When he was in Portland, he wasn't working where his company was either. His company is based out of Minnesota, okay? And he's got a tech job. This is super common. They can work from home. I know my dad works from home, right? Again, tech job. So this is something that I think was not well planned. They don't understand the potential for thousands of people to just up and go and keep their same jobs, but just, go live somewhere else where there's no tax bill. The other thing that's been going on is there's been this, there's a bill that is been put forward, and I think it's on the governor's desk as well. And what it does is it gives the governor and his executive branch, there's a committee that's going to be able to certify and decertify sheriffs, essentially basically being able to veto the vote of the people as to who their constitutional sheriff is going to be. We have a really great sheriff here in Washington. His name is Keith Swank. He's down in Pierce County, which is the Tacoma area. I've met him. When I met him, one of the questions I asked him, I said, listen, the police officer, the deputy that arrested me, was deputized to the FBI. So the way it was explained to me was he worked for Pierce County Sheriff's Department, and then he was basically on the Joint Terrorism Task Force with the FBI. And he left his county, Pierce County, to come into my county, Kitsap County, and arrest me. And this was before Keith Swank was arrested. So when I mentioned this to them, he says that would never happen on my watch. I would prevent it from happening. I don't know if that's the case. I actually don't know if that FBI agent was actually an FBI agent and then was, does the FBI thing where give me an office and a laptop so I can use your law enforcement shield. I'm not sure. But Keith Swank was asked by one of our local radio hosts, John Curley here, what's going to happen if the Washington state government decertifies him as sheriff and tries to remove him?
So, Sheriff, you're going to have to stand before these people, and they're
No, I won't even go. I won't even go there. I won't acknowledge them. Do you understand this? They have no authority over me. They can say whatever they want to say. They can decertify me. I'm not going to go up and speak to them and tell them that trans women are men, and I stand by that, and they don't like it, and they're going to throw me out because it's hate speech. No, I'm not even going to go talk to them. I'm not going to entertain it. They can do whatever they want to do, and they can send me a letter in the mail, and they can send whomever to remove me from office. They're going to have to come down and do it by force. I'm not leaving. I've been elected, and I'm standing firm.
Sheriff, here's how it sort of works in let's take a city level. So you got the city manager, you got the city council, you got the mayor, and then you got the chief of police there in that city. That chief is sort of held in check by the city manager, the city council, and the mayor. They kind of hold them in check. When it comes to sheriffs, they don't have that same sort of structure in place. So it seems like they're trying to put this group, this committee, this justice commission, all appointed by the governor, kind of to hold you in check, to make you accountable to what they believe and how they believe you should be acting out in public.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And they're not going to tell me how to behave, and I'm not going to accept it. So they could pass whatever they want to say. I'm the flippin' sheriff of Pierce County. If you don't like me, you can unelect me. And I'll tell you this, if they pass something to decertify me and try to remove me from office, I said it before, I'm just reading Facebook here, people saying, not even on posts I put out, when are you ready to go, Sheriff? We're going to stand and defend you, and we're going to protest anything like this. And this maybe is what needs to happen, John, because of the overreach of this tyrannical government that's been in charge for 40 years, imposing its will upon us, and I'm standing up against them, and Mrs. Sheriff is too. We're ready for this fight.
Right.
Hold on. How do I make it go away? Okay. So that's Keith Swank. He's not even going to acknowledge their authority to talk to him, which is the correct thing. The sheriff is elected by the people. The sheriff has the ability, the constitutional ability, to arrest the president of the United States when he's within his county if the president commits an error. No other law enforcement agency can do that, right? No other agency can do that. You can't have a police chief. You can't have a police officer. You can't have a marshal. You can't have a state trooper in any one of the states. None of them can arrest the president of the United States while he's in office ever, because their authority derives from the executive branch. So they're either a federal executive branch officer or it's a state that is incorporated under the government under the Supremacy Clause, and they cannot arrest a president or ever. Okay. It cannot happen. Even if the president, while he's in office, came out and shot somebody, there is no law enforcement agency that falls under the executive branch of government like that can do it. But a sheriff can, because the way the sheriff is designed is he is the people's bulwark against the government's, plural, right? He is our law enforcement officer. And his purpose is not just to, prosecute crimes outside of city limits or, enforce the law outside of city limits. It is also to enforce the law upon the city government and upon the state government. They are a law enforcement check against unchecked power by the state. They are our sheriff. He answers to no one. No one. Okay. It's whoever we want to elect as our sheriff. He's the guy who's designed to protect us from the king. That was literally what the Magna Carta was about. Okay. It was flipping the role of sheriff from being the king's law enforcement officer to being the people's law enforcement officer. So I support Keith Swank fully in his desire to, stay in office based on the will of the people. And Pierce County is, I think, like the 59th biggest county in the country. So it's not a small county. And he won that election, and I hope he wins many, many more elections, which is tough to do in Washington state. It's tough to do in Washington state because we have universal mail-in voting and we use Dominion voting machines for the most part. And I think a smattering of Smartmatic. Speaking of, I want to show this to you guys. This is Smartmatic down in the Philippines. So the Smartmatic company, which again is the parent company of Dominion. Okay. They're the same company. They use the same hardware. It's a branding thing. It's like saying the difference between Lexus and Toyota. They're the same thing. Okay. It's just branding. And I've had a couple people, they're not this. They are the same. They're the same company. They just created two different shell corporations to create diversity of contracts, but it's literally the same machine, same technology. They're all coming out of the same, computer scientists, engineers, mostly coming out of Venezuela. So Smartmatic got a contract in the Philippines to run their election. Because of what happened in the Philippines, the Smartmatic company is under indictment in the state of Florida for basically bribes. Okay. So this clip is in the Philippines. This is in their Congress, and they're having a congressional meeting with the representative from Smartmatic, and they are really upset. Okay. Because what happened was the politicians stood up and sold these electronic voting machines to their people, saying these are going to be great. These are going to be awesome. And then what promptly happened was the machines didn't work as the politicians said they would. And they're pissed.
So what you're saying, what you're telling us is that the server is the one that dictates whether it will accept the message or not, irrespective of the time being used by the sender.
The server is not looking at the time, but rather the digital signatures and the contents of the package being generated by the PICO. So if
but if that's the case, Mr. Chairman, what's the use of having a time as far as the PICO sender is concerned? What's the purpose of the time if that is immaterial?
The time gives you the sequence of the actions, and when you actually
but this, if I may interrupt, as Congressman Goles says, if this sequence can be delayed to 10 in the evening, what the heck? My God.
Sir,
your assurance was that anything that happens between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. would be reflected. as 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I didn't know that 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. could be moved to 10 in the evening. You realize what a fool you have made,
Sir,
of the legislators who passed this law?
I understand, sir. With all due respect, it's an unforeseen situation. It's one of those.
Unforeseen?
Yes, sir.
That was the principal guarantee that this would be an honest election. That we would know digitally what would happen during election day and during the election hours.
And you do, sir, if I may.
No, don't forget that. The sons of bitches! You had us standing here guaranteeing to the public and the world that even if fraud is committed, we would be able to trace it. We never said that fraud could not be committed. But you said we could trace it. And now you tell me that at 10 in the evening you could do it and we would never know.
No, sir. I stand by our product and we can trace.
Okay, so I don't know if you guys could hear the volume very well on my end. It was a little quiet. But what he's saying is basically we stood up and told the world that we would be able to trace everything digitally. 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. we would see the whole election. We'd have a digital way to just instantly look at it. And then they're like, well, but there's also data coming in and packets, and it stays open until 10 p.m. They changed everything on it. And so that politician is like, do you know how much of a fool you made us look? We promised, we didn't say there couldn't be fraud, but you were supposed to help us check the fraud. And now what's going on is you're the one committing the fraud, right? And we can't check it because you're the one who's supposed to create the checks and balances. So that politician had the right attitude. He's like, we stood up here and told the world that this was going to fix our problems, and it made it worse. Okay. Now contrast that with our politicians where we know, absolutely know there's illegals voting. We know that everybody in America can get a freaking ID card. Anybody who's, oh, you can't get an ID card, they're nuts. This is Lisa Murkowski. She was tracked down by the Lindell TV reporter in the hallway asking her about, are you going to support the Save America Act? And she came out after this and basically fully opposed it. And listen to her response as to why.
Where do you stand on the Save America Act? Do you, support getting this legislation passed to protect elections?
Not as it is drafted now.
Why not?
The implementation in a rural state like Alaska is going to disenfranchise an extraordinary majority. And while I support citizenship voting and voting ID, I want to make sure that it's implementable.
Where do you stand on the...
So she's saying that she can't support it because of the implementation, because in a rural state like Alaska, apparently people don't have birth certificates and can't prove that they're American citizens, which then goes to beg to ask, well, how do they drive on the roads or get hunting licenses in your rural state of Alaska? Or how do you charge sales tax? Because guess what? Or not sales tax, income tax. Guess what? You've got income tax. Lisa Murkowski, her dad was a senator. This is a nepotistic position here, right? They've got stakeholder interests in Alaska that support the Murkowski family because they make sure that whatever big business has got a foothold in Alaska constantly has their bread buttered, clearly, right? And she's worried about disenfranchising Alaskan voters. That's not... Roll my eyes back in my head, okay? Are you telling me that your rural voters are too dumb to get an ID card? Really? You're going to go with that? Now, keep in mind, this is the same state that just implemented ranked choice voting. She lost her last election, but because of ranked choice voting, what happens is when a loser incumbent is trying to run, what they do is they go get out a couple dum-dums to go run against them to diffuse the opposition vote, right? If you're a vote against Lisa Murkowski, and you've got two other candidates that are like hardcore MAGA and they won't drop out of the race, then what happens is you might have, okay, this is exactly what happened in Missouri. I'll explain this. It wasn't a jungle primary or ranked choice voting, but this is what happens in ranked choice voting. So in Missouri, when I was in prison, they were electing a new governor, and Governor Mike Kehoe ended up ultimately winning. Governor Mike Kehoe is kind of a rhino. Okay. He's kind of a moderate, squishy Republican. I don't know. I mean, maybe amongst Republican governors, he's better than like a Governor Cox or something like that, or Brad Little in Idaho, but still, he's a pretty squishy Republican. Okay. He's pretty rhino. And there were two other candidates, and Missouri is such a red state. If you win the Republican primary for governor, you're pretty assured that you're going to get your governor seat. Okay. So in the primary, that's where the real action's happening. So there's a lot of money spent in that primary. There's ads on TV, and you had two MAGA, you had two MAGA candidates, and oddly enough, I think everybody had that was the attorney general race. It was the Erics. But anyways, they were running. And you had one of the guys coming up on TV, and he had like a Mexican on the commercial, and he's like, we're going to deport this guy. And this guy's like, I don't have ID card. It was really funny, but he was running on deportation. They were running on not allowing China to own any more farmland, which is a huge problem in Missouri, right? By the way, they were running on, mass deportation. They were running on really strong, no girls and boys sports, really strong conservative issues. Very popular, both of them. And these guys spent a ton of money, all three of them, advertising. And Mike Kehoe played this little middle of the ground road, right? He kind of did this whole, I'm going to do this, and a lot of incremental steps, and just kind of ran I like to ride my horses and I'm sort of a Midwest cowboy theme. Whereas the other guys were really running on hard policy, actionable things that could happen. And what happened in the election was, the Mike Kehoe ended up winning, and I'm going to get the percentages wrong, but we're in gist here. He got like 32.1% of the vote. The second place MAGA candidate got 31.9% of the vote, and the third place MAGA candidate got like 31.4% of the vote or something like that. So Mike Kehoe ended up winning the primary by a percentage point over the other two candidates. Well, hold on just a second here. The other two candidates, there was zero daylight between them policy-wise. They both ran on getting rid of China out of the farms. They both ran on mass deportation. They both ran on supporting Trump. They both ran on securing the elections. There was no policy daylight between them. They were both running as MAGA fighters. But what happened was Missouri's MAGA. 63% of the people voted for the MAGA candidate, and 30% voted for the Rhino candidate. And who'd we get? The Rhino candidate. If one of those other candidates had dropped out, it would have been a 50 to 40% vote or 60 to 40% vote for the MAGA candidate. But because the MAGA vote was divided between two really good candidates, we got neither of them. And that's what happens in ranked choice voting. If you're an incumbent and you're a loser, like Lisa Murkowski, you just have a couple other guys run against you, and you kind of subtly support them, and then you run a non-confrontational campaign, and you end up being everybody's second and third choices. But because nobody gets a plurality as first choice, they go down the ranking, and you eventually get to Lisa Murkowski winning. This is why Sarah Palin lost in her House seat there. She was more popular than the other candidates. She should have won, but the ranked choice voting got her. Right? Because someone else that had her same politics ran and split the issues and split the vote, and we ended up getting the lesser of the candidates. In America, it is broadly understood that the 2020 election had some fraud in it. Let me show you this Rasmussen Reports polling here. How likely is it that cheating affected the 2020 election? This is the question they asked. So amongst all, 43% of the electoral body total, this is all Americans polled in their polling, 43% believe that it was very likely that there was cheating in the 2020 election that affected the outcome of the election. 19% are not sure. That means they haven't decided one way or the other. Probably leaning towards yes if you haven't decided 6 years later there was no fraud. 6% not sure, or excuse me, 19% somewhat, 6% not sure, 9% not very sure there wasn't cheating, and only 23%, and as Scott Adams used to say, you can get 25% of America to believe anything that's dumb. 23% say not at all. Amongst Republicans, the numbers are much stronger. Amongst independents, it's close to the Republican numbers, and only the Democrats, but even the Democrats amongst yes and not sure still come up with 45%, for 49% of the vote. They still think that there was probably cheating that affected the outcome of the election. So it's pretty broad belief that our elections have some problems. Okay. Now, one of the other things too that happens a lot of times with conservatives is this happens with everybody. It's not just conservatives, is being victims of the psyop, right? And on Twitter, on X, and on Facebook, and on Instagram, and sometimes on Instagram and Facebook, it's harder to sniff out the bot farms or the illegitimate pages, because on X, at least you can see the accounts of origin, and X works a little bit differently than Facebook and Instagram. And And so anyways, on X, Emerald Robin points out that there are some really major quote unquote influencers that are coming on the right that are not in fact really influencers. And she points out one particular account called Insurrection Barbie. So let's take a listen to this, because I think it's really good for us to understand that there is a very coordinated effort to try to quote unquote split the vote, right? To get the normally what would be the bulwark against unconstitutional actions, to get it to basically to stop believing in itself. And so she highlights this.
In the wake of President Donald Trump launching war with Iran, you might have noticed, especially if you follow me on X, that a bunch of Department of War employees or contractors posing as MAGA anons recently began pushing a piece on evangelical Christianity, supposedly written by an account known as Insurrection Barbie, which behind the scenes is a woman named Irina Pashinskaya Sedano. Now, here's the problem with this. This woman is a convicted felon. But people like James Lindsay and, of course, Dan Bongina boosted this piece. And I said this woman allegedly wrote it, but we're wondering who it actually wrote it. Here's where it gets really dark. The feds running this op are setting up this convicted felon as some sort of evangelical spiritual leader. I mean, just look at recent posts. Did Irina suddenly get a divinity degree after jail? And yes, there's even a large number, like I said, of DOW employees and contractors pretending to be MAGA accounts on X. This network includes MAGA influencers who get paid per tweet to defend these pro-Israel information ops. And you know that because there's been lots of news out there about that. The $7,000 per tweet news, the fact that they were using Brad Parscale to dole out these payments. And I know people who got on the payroll personally. Guess what? The reporter known as Bonchi at Red State and Dana Lash even got upset when I pointed out this network, which is obvious and right in front of our faces. In 2024, Insurrection Barbie implied that she's Jewish. In 2026, Barbie now claims to be an evangelical Christian, doing X spaces on theology for gullible people. So why did all of these people promote this scam? Many of the same people are also pushing the operation I'm calling Shabbat Shalom. That's the push to encourage you, a Christian, to stop going to church on Sunday and to switch to the Jewish Shabbat Sabbath on Saturday. Now, that's what I would call heresy. Christians began observing Sunday as the Lord's Day to commemorate Jesus' resurrection in the first century. Former CIA employee and whistleblower Kevin Shipp tweeted this on X, saying, quote, "One of the largest targeted groups for mass PSYOP operations is evangelical Christians. Government and intelligence agencies know they stand in the way of total state control. If they can be deceived by a mass PSYOP, that the controllers are really one of them, they will follow blindly into tyranny." Kevin Shipp is also the author of the book, Twilight of the Shadow Government, How Transparency Will Kill the Deep State. And Kevin Shipp joins us now.
All right, so we don't need to listen to Kevin Shipp, but you get the point there, right? There's a coordinated effort to try to take down evangelicals, Christians in general, and they're going to do it in bites, right? They're going to do it in bites. They're going to come at you and they're going to, okay, stop going to church, do it on a different day where you don't have the same support systems. They're going to, constantly take bites and try to break apart that coalition. I had my own little thing on X yesterday. Let me share this. And this is actually why I think I probably was quote unquote banned from X recently, or my account was restricted. But I saw this post here. It's by Dave Hale. Okay. So who's Dave Hale? Dave Hale is Concerned Citizen. So let's look at his profile here. So we look at his profile and it's David Hale, Concerned Republican. And then it says, conservative Republican voter terrified by the state of Trumpist GOP. Hashtag Reagan caucus. Okay, so he's trying to bring back the Reagan caucus. Your look at this. Look at this post he puts here. He's got Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney. Your semi-regular reminder that this would have been the best administration in a generation, and it's not even close. Hashtag Mitt post. So I took a look at this and I thought, that doesn't seem authentic, because he was posting this. CPAC is proud to announce that Steve Bannon is confirmed speaker for CPAC USA in Grapevine, Texas, March 25th to 28th. It's got the confirmed speaker, Steve Bannon. So I was like, anyone proud to associate with Steve Bannon is not a conservative. So I looked at his account and I pulled this up, and in X, you're able to go in and I'll show you how you do this here. In fact, let me just do it. So in X, you come in and you click on someone's joined August 13 button, and it takes you to an about page. Date joined August 2023. Okay. Account based in the United States. So what this means is there's some cell phone or some account that is associated with a United States IP address that started this account. Okay. And it was verified June 2024. Okay. It's had 2 username changes since 2024. Okay. Not a big deal. But then this, look. It's connected. So the way that they're accessing their X profile on this quote unquote US based account is from the Nigerian App Store. You heard me right. So this conservative, concerned Republican that is criticizing anything and everything MAGA and anybody and everybody who supports MAGA under the guise of we got to bring back Reaganism, okay, is logging in from Nigeria. This is not an American, but this guy's got how many followers? Let's look here. He's got 17.2 thousand followers. I have 1,600 followers, and I'm a J6er. Okay. He's got 10 times my reach and influence, and he's logging in from where? Nigeria. These are those bot farms. When you go in and look, this guy's probably running 100 accounts that are just like this. And they go and they do a lot of engagement bait, and they do a lot of that stuff to gain influence. And it creates this influence army, right, that distracts people, because a lot of people aren't going to take the time to go in and look at that stuff. I looked at that and I was like, dude, it's Nigerian. I posted that. Next thing you know, my account is being restricted, not his. Make it make sense. It doesn't make sense. Right now, General Flynn reminds us something that Abraham Lincoln said. He said, if we lose this country, it's not because of some foreign actor. It's because of our own actions, our own legislature, and our own lack of ability to see past the nonsense.
Trump will sign.
Oh, got to show this. And he's saying here, this is why, Trump is in power. But one of the things we saw in the first term is he signed a lot of executive orders that literally went unfulfilled. They just got signed, sat on a desk, and nobody did anything about it, which is one of the reasons why Trump has had such a tight cabinet. Is when he signs an executive order, he wants his cabinet officials to go put him into action, not let him get bogged down in litigation and inaction. And so General Flynn is reminding us here, if Trump has to use the executive order to try to get the voting squared away, it could easily backfire on him, because nobody will do anything about it. But the people will sit back and think he did, right? The people will sit back and think he did. And accounts like the one I just showed you will create the confirmation bias of probable believability. Our elections are secure. It's too hard to look in the mirror and realize they're not, right? So we just want to believe that they're secure, and we'll go along to get along. We'll have a huge event like an election be stolen, and we'll all go to work the next day and file our taxes in the spring. So Mike Flynn here is explaining how it's our own selves that do this to us if we don't follow the law.
Trump will sign an executive order. Those executive orders will not be adhered to. Hell, we can't even get the Republican Party, the Republican in the Senate or the House, certainly the Senate, to pass an ID check for our voting. I mean, that ought to tell everybody everything as how hard this is going to be. And this fight that we are waging internally, as Abraham Lincoln said, we're not going to die because of an overseas threat. We're going to die because of our own suicide. And he said that at the age of 28 years old. Trump will sign an executive order. Those executive orders will not be.
Okay. So if Trump signs an executive order, it's not adhered to, which, if he doesn't have the support of the Senate, it probably won't be adhered to. We're going to get a lot of crazy stuff going on, like what's happening in New York. yesterday in New York, just, same place that had 9/11, we had this. Oh, my screen did a little combo thing. I don't know how to make it do that except for on accident. Okay. So Mandami in New York, mayor of New York, we're in the middle of Ramadan, and he invited people to come into the mayor's office in City Hall and sit down on the floor and have this Islamic meal, Muslim meal, celebrating Ramadan. Now, we have religious freedom. You can celebrate any way you want. That's not the problem here. What's going on here, though, is you're having a degradation of our society. We are a Christian nation. I don't care what Barack Obama says, right? Our entire legal system and everything is rooted in biblical values and biblical principles. It's a Christian nation. Whether you're secular or not, we still adhere to the quote unquote 10 commandments as our guiding light. Okay. Islam doesn't have that same standard. I could go on for hours and hours and show imams in the United States talking about war slaves and child brides and honor killings. I could go on and on and on. It's almost nauseating. It's nauseating to go through it, to think that that's happening here. If there's some evangelical weirdo out there with some, weird cult that's doing child brides like some fundamental group or whatever, the whole state comes down on them. But when Islam does it, we don't want to be xenophobic. We don't want to go after them. Okay. So what happened yesterday was they had this meal in City Hall. This is literally a town that just last week had 2 ISIS dedicated adherents throw bombs into a crowd, actual bombs, actual ignitable bombs into a crowd. Then they went and got a search warrant and looked at their storage locker full of explosives. This was really happened. It barely made the news. Why? It's not what Mandami wants out there. Instead, he wants you to see this. He wants you to see the celebration. So, in light of explaining how the media and these influence campaigns manipulate people, look at how coordinated this event was. So this is Mandami, and these are the people that came to visit him. And look at how produced these videos are from these quote-unquote influencers that were invited in with Mandami. These are a bunch of accounts that have those 10, 15, 50,000 followers, and they put out these videos to kind of glorify this event in New York yesterday.
Tell me why I got invited to an iftar hosted by Mayor Mamdani. At this point, my side quests just keep getting more random. But you bet I dropped everything to head to City Hall where the iftar was taking place. Zohran's team brought together a bunch of creators to join him for iftar. And I am actually a fangirl for him. I can't believe this man is real. I low-key thought he was AI because he's too jolly and charismatic for a New Yorker. This man catered a massive spread of classic South Asian food, and you can tell he loves us. Then dinner turned into intentional conversations about Ramadan and what this month means to us. My favorite part was hearing from creators who don't practice Islam but have secondary knowledge through their friends.
NYC's favorite friendly neighborhood thought daughter got invited to iftar at City Hall with Mayor Mamdani. Girl, I'm still in shock. Let's get into this vlog. For starters, I just hopped off of a bus from DC, and that vlog is gonna come later. But I knew that I had to come to this iftar, so I just packed my malfa in my bag, went to the bathroom when I got there, and freshened up. The vibes were so cute. What do you mean we're sitting on the floor about to break our fast with the mayor? I also love seeing familiar faces in creator events. Then the mayor walked in, and y'all, he literally handed us dates. And even though I don't like dates, I had to eat them. I had to really, after that, it was finally time for iftar and also reflections on Ramadan and our favorite Ramadan memories. New York is such a diverse city, and I feel like the Muslim Ummah reflects that so well. So it was really cool to just share stories and hear about how Ramadan and Eid is different for all of us, depending on where in the city or the world that we come from. But girl, I could barely focus because now it was time for me to go interview the mayor. Stay tuned for that video, but we just had so much fun nerding out about Black Muslim history in the city. And after almost crying off my makeup, it was time to just kiki with the other creators. As a native New Yorker, as an African-American Muslim, it's so nice to feel seen and be considered in spaces like these, to be surrounded by fellow community members and allies to celebrate these last 10 nights. And who would have thought that after transitioning from fashion and beauty content to sharing my passion for Black Muslim history and media, that I would end up in the mayor's office. And that's a wrap. I met the mayor. I made him laugh. You know what I mean? No tengo la palabra. I did.
And during Ramadan, iftar is something to look forward to. It's also a moment where you're asking yourself how you can reconnect to who you are and also to the people around you. And that meaning is something that I think sometimes gets lost.
So obviously, right, Mandami, there's this scandal that broke out with his wife because his wife made a lot of incendiary comments justifying, rationalizing, and even supporting the October 7th massacre in Israel. That's the mayor. Inviting people in, a city that was attacked by, allegedly, according to the official story, right, Islamic terrorists, bringing down the towers, caused a huge amount of damage to that city. And now he's got this celebration happening in City Hall. And again, this isn't about freedom of speech or freedom of religion. That's all completely there. But Mandami is not someone who exactly exemplifies, patriotic tendencies. And there's something else that was really significant. Now I've got to find it because I accidentally closed the tab because of that double tab thing I was telling you about earlier. So let me grab it really quick again because it is important. Of the people that he invited to that, there was a symbol that was used multiple times during the event, and they did Ramadan prayers and stuff like that while they were there. Again, this isn't about freedom of religion at any means. That totally got that. Right? This is about the symbolism of this. There was just an attack in New York by Islamic terrorists. And here it is right here. So let me show it to you. I got to put it on the screen. Okay. So this is one of the ISIS adherents in New York right here. This guy, ISIS adherents in New York, when he was arrested, coming out of court, right? He's been arrested for literally bomb throwing. And he's making a symbol, this one finger up thing, right? Now we all do, whatever. It's not a thumbs up. That's kind of more American. A one finger up, and this is a symbol that jihadists will use. People that are oftentimes committing violence. This has to do something with solidarity or whatever. It's kind of like the old peacetime hippie signal, war, peace. Make war not, or make love not peace kind of thing. This is their little symbol. One. I think it's a reference to Allah or something like that. Okay. So here in City Hall on the literally day after this attack, he had these guys in here making that same symbol. Solidarity with the terrorists. Tough stuff. We're not going to be beat from an enemy without. It'll be an enemy from within. In, where was this? This was Uruguay. Down in Uruguay, a politician was on their floor, and they have the same problem there. This problem with Islamic immigration and takeover is really a big deal. It's happening all over the place. Where is it? I want that one. I want that one. Okay, here it is. So she did this in their floor, and I'm not going to play it because it's in Spanish. I can't understand it. But she's a female politician, Representative Adriana Peña. Okay. And she got in and she showed them exactly what is going to happen to the women in Uruguay if they continue to allow mass Muslim immigration and they don't stop the ideology before it gets going. This is what the women in Iran are required to wear. This is what the people that are supporting Iran and saying we have no business there. This is what they're allowing to happen. Right. Again, it's not about freedom of religion. This is about oppression of women. Okay. She puts this on and she's like, are you uncomfortable with me wearing this? Because this is what they're advocating everybody wear. The women who don't wear the hijab like this, that's just because the religion hasn't fully taken over yet. They still play along nice enough to get along until they reach the majority, and then this will get introduced and it will get enforced. This is part of Sharia. Okay. Afghanistan. We just spent 20 years nation building in Afghanistan. Allowing women to go to school, allowing women to go to university, allowing women to work, allowing women to drive. And guess what they did this week? They've been working up to it, but now it's done. It is official. In the country of Afghanistan, women are not allowed to go to school. Young girls cannot go to school and learn to read, learn civics, learn anything, right? This is an ideology that excludes half of the population and oppresses them as its default setting. There's no enlightenment here. Okay. They haven't gone through an enlightenment where they've given universal rights and human rights. They don't recognize those things as real. This is Eric Schmidt talking about illegal immigration. Remember, yesterday I played the clip from Speaker Johnson where he was basically saying, oh, well, you know, the enforcement's been a little tight. We're having a sea change. We're kind of course correcting. We've upset some of our, you know, Hispanic constituents. I'll tell you this, no Hispanic that is a U.S. citizen is upset because they're the ones that are usually hurt the worst by illegal immigration. Okay. They're hurt the worst by it. So Eric Schmidt from Missouri was on the Senate floor and he gave a rousing speech basically saying, listen, the American people voted on an agenda of closing the border and mass deportations. Don't back off. Here he is.
You can cry about it. You can whine about it. You lost an election over it. The White House has dealt with you in good faith.
I'll rewind you.
You can cry about it. You can whine about it. You lost an election over it. The White House has dealt with you in good faith. You want to prolong this until you get another incident. While your activists are on the street confronting ICE agents in sanctuary jurisdictions, hoping they get some viral moment, it's like we're done with that. Okay, we're done with it. Your NGO networks, I know they're still active. They're still doing their thing. But the truth is, all of the incidents that you can really count on, that you can point to, that any confrontation happened with ICE agents are in sanctuary jurisdictions where they don't respond to 911 calls for ICE agents. They don't cooperate with ICE agents. It's very easy for an ICE agent to show up at a penitentiary or a jail or prison and get somebody and deport them. What's harder to do is when they show up in a community and they have to go get somebody out of a house with more people. And they know that is exactly the dynamic. So I guess the question is, have you ever seen anything like this? The lack of good faith. This is really about, and I just want to be clear, this isn't about some reform. This is their final stand in opposition to the will of the American people who voted for deportations.
And it goes hand in hand with the Save America Act, right? Requiring that American citizens provide ID in order to exercise their sacred right of voting, right? Like yesterday I said, you have ballots or you have bullets. Those are your two options in how you steer your nation. Okay. And what he's saying there is, listen, we want mass deportation. This is the Democrats' last stand. This is their constituency. It's that 25% that is illegal that end up on the voter rolls because of motor voter agendas that then creates this universe of ballots. And the Democrats know they need ballots to win, not voters. The voters overwhelmingly support law and order. The voters overwhelmingly support deportations. The voters overwhelmingly support E-Verify, but all of these agendas. But yet politicians consistently act against that interest. And the 2024 election was a referendum on all of it. It was a referendum on all of it. One of the things it was a referendum on as well was DEI. Now, some of you guys probably know about BlackRock. And who runs BlackRock's? Larry Fink. BlackRock is one of, I believe it's the largest private equity or largest whatever it is. It's huge. It has almost, if not controlling interest, it has majority shares in thousands of corporations. And over the last decade, really since the Obama administration, BlackRock has been forcing their companies to institute DEI policies. Everything from transgender mutilation to trans rights to affirmative action type policies and things like that. They've been pushing them. 2024 was a referendum on that. And simultaneously, there's a huge business interest in AI and tech. And what does it need? It needs electricity, which runs counter to the Green New Deal type agenda that BlackRock was also pushing. They were a huge pusher of all the Green New Deal legislation, solar panels, windmills, all that kind of stuff that really did not serve we the people at all. He sat down with Bret Baier and gave this interview, and Bret Baier kind of put him on the spot. Why all of a sudden are you removing these policies which were damaging to these companies? You cost them money, right? But all of a sudden you're changing your opinion. And this just goes to show the fickle nature of the people in charge of us. These are stakeholders. right? Not shareholders like the voters in the United States. These are stakeholders. These are people who have outsized interest in particular topics, and they use money and influence to manipulate things. So here's Larry Fink being put on the spot by Brett Baer, and Larry Fink's excuse is, well, the pendulum swings. Okay.
The woke era, a failed experiment. The ESG, the DEI, the kind of push for that. That when you talk about things now, you talk in a practical sense, what we can do, what we can get done. Looking back at that, how do you see it?
Society moves, the pendulum moves all the time. In BlackRock's cases, we are responsible for managing money for everybody. And even today, as you said, maybe these, renewables are less talked about it. I can tell you right now, we have many investors worldwide are investing in renewables, trying to emphasize solar and other things like that. We're working with Occidental Petroleum right now to building the best carbon capture factories in Texas right now. So do I believe the pendulum 5 years ago was too far? Yes. You do. I believe we're more I'm personally more pragmatic too. And I believe.
But do you think BlackRock pushed some companies a little bit further left than you thought?
This is key.
It was never our intention, because our job is I got to be a fiduciary to everybody who gives us money. Our responsibility, Brett, is to making sure if one of our investors wants to invest 100% in hydrocarbons in Texas, I'm investing 100% of the money in Texas. But if another state fund wants us to invest in, let's say, all green energy, we're going to do that. It's their money. But today, because of AI and the overwhelming need for power and electricity, it can't just be one way right now. It can't just be hydrocarbons. So if you see what China is doing right now, China is rapidly building more nuclear than any other country in the world. They have the largest solar fields in the world, yet they're the biggest importer of gas and oil. And so to me, more importantly today, I think society has moved into a better position of having more pragmatism. And what you're hearing from me is I'm echoing what we're hearing from our clients.
Larry, it's fascinating. Thanks very much for the time.
Okay, so let me dissect that for you. Larry is saying, well, we just did what people wanted. That's not true. That's not true. They pushed it. Okay, the pendulum went so far left because they pushed it. The people never approved of that, ever. Okay, they didn't want that. When he said, I had to be a good fiduciary, it was the opposite. You were the one that was saying, I'll only manage your money if X, Y, Z. Okay, they pushed it. He's the one who moved the pendulum, and the people had a revolt in 2020 and 2024. The people had a revolt. Second to last thing I'm going to share with you guys here. This is Ted Lieu. So Ted Lieu has been on the House floor. He's been in committee meetings, and he said some extremely incendiary things about Donald Trump, saying that Donald Trump, there's videos of him with kids. I didn't play the clip yesterday, but Bill O'Reilly, the story broke. The woman who accused Donald Trump of raping her when she was 13 on camera, turns out she was just arrested for a whole slew of crimes, okay? Like a lot of crimes. She's a liar, basically what I'm saying here. All right. But Ted Lieu has kind of taken this and run with it. And this kind of leads into the Thomas Massie thing. Thomas Massie set up a situation for the Republican Party and for Donald Trump by pushing the Epstein file release. We're not against the Epstein file release. We learned a lot. The timing of it was horrible. Right as Donald Trump's on the eve of going to Venezuela, on the eve of going to Iran, you created this scandal. Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene both stood with women who got involved with Jeffrey Epstein as adults, aka they sold themselves to Jeffrey Epstein for benefits as adults, and then became traffickers themselves. So they were never victims. Never, ever were they victims. They were always either prostitutes or traffickers, but they took the moniker victim. And Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie supported them. They stood at a press conference with signs with Donald Trump's face saying he was a rapist. We stand with victims. You didn't have a single victim with you. All of those women are now being investigated, and they threw up fits. Oh, our names were exposed. Of course they were. First of all, you're standing publicly. Second of all, you're not a victim. You're not a victim. He set up a situation where Democrats could then paint the Republicans as the cover-up artists of Epstein. Now, Pam Bondi made some critical mistakes. The timing wasn't great. They should have released them sooner or waited, whatever. I do believe they were going to come out at some point, okay? But the timing was bad. It hurt the political capital of the Republican Party immensely. It did immense amounts of damage. When Trump said to Marjorie Taylor Greene, "This will hurt my friends," he's saying, listen, I've got Howard Lutnick. These guys were not involved, but they're in the files. But the intention in the media goes to Howard Lutnick and not, for example, Catherine Rumler. That's just the independent guys like us that are talking about that. You're not seeing that on CNN, okay? He created this horrible situation. Now, let me show you how that played out. Here's Ted Lieu. Okay, this post comes from Tony Segura. Will you explain? So he's sending this to Ted Lieu. Will you explain your relationship with Ed Buck? And I'm going to try something here. Let's see if I can make this screen a little better. Should have done this at the beginning of the show. I'm not used to. We have a different setup with Ron. Look at that. I can kind of change the way that looks. Okay. So will you explain your relationship with Ed Buck? Who's Ed Buck? This is Ed Buck right here. Okay, so this is Ed Buck right here. Ed Buck is a billionaire from California. He lives in Ted Lieu's district. He's very close friends with Ted Lieu, Adam Schiff, and Adam Kinzinger. Okay, there's lots of pictures with Ted Buck with those three. They're all Southern California guys. That's where Ted Buck was. So Ted Buck, a couple years ago, this was like 2021 maybe, he was arrested because he had to call the police because he had a black male prostitute in his home that he gave drugs to that overdosed. Okay. So he overdosed and died. Ed Buck is the one who gave him the drugs. So that started a murder investigation, which then led to the fact that Ted Lieu is a serial killer. He's killed multiple male prostitutes that he's had over by giving them drugs. Okay. So he's currently, I'm pretty sure he was convicted. He's in jail. He's gone. Okay. But he says this. He says, "How will you explain your relationship with Ed Buck? And you don't have the same belt buckle, Ted Lieu. What's the backstory on that? How many times have you visited Buck's home? Was Adam Schiff present too?" These are good questions. 2 African-American men, the first in 2017, the second in 2019, were discovered, so it was 2019, were discovered in Buck's West Hollywood home, later to be determined to be drug overdoses. Several reports indicated that Buck had a history of bringing African-American men into his house where he would repeatedly inject them with high doses of crystal methamphetamine for sexual gratification. He plied the men with drugs and then sexually assaulted them while they were unconscious and immobile. In January 2019, a coalition of 50 civil rights active organization called for law enforcement to investigate the matter. Adam Schiff attempted to run interference. On September 17th, 2019, Buck was arrested and charged with 3 counts of battery causing serious injury, administering methamphetamine, and maintaining a drug house. He was a massive Democrat donor. Okay. He was convicted of 9 federal charges in 2021. So that's why I was aware of it in 2021. On April 14th, 2022, Buck was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Here's Ed Buck, right, with Adam Schiff and Ted Lieu. Ed Buck, obviously the guys are all wearing their nice rainbow bow ties. Here's Ed Buck up close. There's Ted Lieu and Ed Buck. And here's Ed Buck at Ted Lieu at some other event with this guy. So when Ted Lieu gets up and he's like, what are they covering up? What are they hiding? I think that's a better question for you, Ted Lieu. Seems like you've got some pretty shady associations. So when you understand all of this and you understand the nature and dynamic of political capital, the Epstein files release, which was ill-timed, right, did an immense amount of damage to the Republican Party. An immense amount of damage, because for some people, this is a single issue. If you can't stop child trafficking and child sex abuse, you can't do anything. So there's a lot of people that have said that they're going to sit out elections. It was a huge amount of fodder for all of the fake bot accounts to kind of run over Republican cover up. What's Trump hiding? Blah, 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 blah. Right. It didn't look good for the Democrat Party. But again, They're on their last stand, so they're throwing everything at the wall. I mean, they're advocating for illegals to vote. They're advocating for illegal immigrants to stay in this country, no matter what their criminal record is or is not. They're advocating for some of the worst, transgender surgeries for kids, some of the worst policies you can imagine. And Thomas Massie has been their unwitting idiot, in the name of libertarianism and constitutionalism and all that stuff, which, hey, listen, on the surface, we support all of that. I don't like the national debt, right? I think it's irrelevant in the bigger, broader conversation of things because it can't be paid off. It can only be refinanced by another central banker. Okay, but either way, Thomas Massie did an incredible amount of damage. Had there been no Epstein file releases, right, and had it been released at the DOJ's timeframe, which, again, I don't know if they would have released everything they did. I have no idea, right? I have no idea. But as far as taking back our country, I do believe it set us back. Trump's going to play with it. He's going to work with it. There's probably going to be prosecutions. Cross our fingers. But the timing was wrong. As a J6er, one of the things I highly anticipate is more information coming out about J6. But just like right when I came out of prison, I told other J6ers who were like, we're going to get restitution and we're going to be made whole. They did all these horrible things to us. All of that's true. But I warned other J6ers. I said, this has to happen in time. It's going to be a certain, steps of disclosure until you get to the stolen election, which is where we're at now. And once you get to the stolen election, the next thing is going to be January 6th. And we're already seeing all that being teased. What they did on January 6th to cover for the stolen election, right? So once that's released, then there will be political will and political capital to make J6ers whole or, make some kind of official state, whatever it is, okay? Point is, Thomas Massie derailed a lot of that. I appreciate the work he did on the pipe bomber case. Didn't come to, didn't work out. Got the wrong pipe bomber, in my opinion. But this thing that he did against his party, he doesn't understand. And this is why I had it out with Lauren Culp last night on X. Political parties exist for one purpose and one purpose only: to acquire power. That's it. And you have to have the power in order to make changes. And the Republicans barely have the power. Barely. And when you consider the stakeholders, the quote unquote MAGA side of the party doesn't have the power. That power is split with a lot of rhinos and a lot of uniparty members that call themselves Republicans. And so when Thomas Massie did what he did, he gave air cover to the rhinos to basically oppose Trump. And you could oppose Trump for any number of reasons, but Epstein cover-up was one of them. And it just opens the door to everything else. So while I can give whole speeches and lectures on how bad factions are in political parties and stuff like that, it's the game we're playing. It's the game we're playing. You got to win the game. You want to restore the Constitution? Get power and restore the Constitution. Wield the power to restore the Constitution. So here's Donald Trump last night at his rally talking about Thomas Massie. These are brutal words from a president.
We got to get rid of this loser. This guy is bad. He's disloyal to the Republican Party. He's disloyal to the people of Kentucky. And most importantly, he is disloyal to the United States of America. And he's got to be voted out of office as soon as possible. We got to get rid of this loser.
He's got to be voted out of office as soon as possible. And we showed a couple days ago, maybe it was a week ago, we showed Thomas Massie's political donations and how he's getting Smurf donations from one name that's an Islamic name, a Muslim name. He and Marjorie Taylor Greene both took a lot of money from interests that were directly tied to Iran. Go figure. Go figure. What does Trump know that we don't know? We can all see it. We can all see him vote in committee for the Inflation Reduction Act and then grandstand on the House floor when his vote didn't matter because they didn't have the majority, right? It was going to pass without his vote anyways, but he still let it out of committee. We can see him doing the Epstein thing, grandstanding. I stand with victims. Turns out they're not victims, okay? And then creating a huge, huge burst in the political capital that the MAGA movement had. Got to be voted out. It's unfortunate. The guy is running against, right? Former Navy SEAL. He wasn't independent now, but he's going to be a team player. That's the only thing. Trump said he's from central casting. What does that mean? He's going to vote with the party, right? You have to control the party. If you can't control the party, you can't get anything done. Can't get anything done. All right, guys, that's it for us today. Thank you so much. It was a short prep show. I got through a pretty decent show, I think. given all my challenges this morning. Thank you guys for sticking around. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to share the show, like the show, all the fun stuff. We'll talk to you guys again tomorrow.